real-time rice dashboards. They're being delivered this season. We're generating it for all confirmed fields. So these are available. They're ready to be used. If you've got a grower that's happy to have you look at this information, we can get it to you. And it's delivered just in the form of a web link with a sort of a impossible to guess kind of web address, I guess. So it's secure in that sense. So I'll just give you a bit of a walkthrough what the real-time rice dashboard looks like. So when you first open it up, you'll get a page that looks like this, which is just sort of a bit of a background to the project, some links explaining what the project is, who the partners are. There's some papers that we've published based on that talk about the models that have been developed as part of the project. There is a little web app that you can look at if you want to look at sort of the satellite imagery that we're using to generate the outputs. And so that'll bring up this site here. So this is freely available. You can go there and basically you can click on any field. It'll bring up a time series of the NDVI. You can click any date on that time series and it'll load the imagery from that date. You can see we've had lots of cloud this season. And you'll see also there's a couple of sources of imagery. In some areas, we've got this Planet Fusion data, which is daily data at 3 meter resolution. So I'll bring up one of them. It's just a lot higher resolution and it's also daily. So it's skips some of those cloudy days that we've had. Yeah, so that's loading up that 3 meter resolution there. So that's available. So when you load up the dashboard, you can just click on that. You know, imagery used in this project can be viewed in this web app. All right, I'll jump into one. This is a dashboard from one particular farm this season. They've given me permission to show this. It's kind of anonymized in a sense. So what you'll get as you load up the dashboard is you'll get a list of all the paddocks that have been confirmed for this season along the top there. So this particular farm, you'll see we've got 5 different paddocks. And as you click through the paddocks, you can see the red dot changes which paddock is being shown at that time. And also on this little map here, if I turn, the survey layer is basically the confirmed layers that have come, or the confirmed paddocks that are have been entered into MapRice. If you turn that off, there's this blue layer, and this is a model that we've generated to predict where rice is. So you see in this particular farm, there's really good agreement between the sort of the grower entered data and the predicted data. There is a little bit of a prediction there. I'm not sure what that's due to. Might be a bit of water laying around or something like that it's thought it's rice. So that's the map. You can also sort of zoom and pan if you want to. There's a bunch of tools across here. So if you want to zoom in, you just click on the little magnifying glass and you can zoom in like that. Reset. If you want to save anything, you can save it as a JPEG there. All right, then down on the bottom left is a table, which is just sort of a summary of some of the predictions for this field, or well, some of the data and the predictions. So, you know, this map was generated on the 10th of January. It's a Sherpa field, different sowing methods, and it'll tell the sowing date that's been entered into MapRice. And then we've got a model that predicts the permanent water application date. So that'll come up there, a PI prediction. And as we get to awards harvest, it'll also predict the date of the 22% moisture. This 22% moisture prediction is sort of under development, as are a few things in here. So we definitely need more ground truthing. So again, it's just another source of info. You should be doing ground truthing as well, hopefully, to check on some of this, and definitely happy to take feedback when things are out. Maybe I'll go to the bottom right here now. And this is kind of I guess, the phenological prediction kind of graph. So the main thing that this one here is showing is the panicle initiation predictor. And this is exactly the model that you get when you go to this site. basically this should pretty much agree with what's being shown here. The model that's on this side is actually implemented in our software system now, and the Rice Extension site is getting the predictions from our software system. So and so this is based on a growth degree accumulation model to predict panicle initiation. So we accumulate from sowing, and then you'll see from permanent water, the accumulation accelerates because, water accelerates the growth, obviously. And then it gets the threshold. When it crosses a certain threshold, that's the predicted panicle initiation date. Obviously I think there's a aerial, so for aerial sown crops, there is no permanent water that's different from sowing date, of course, so you just get a single curve there like that. Should be mentioned that, of course, this permanent water date is the predicted date, so there could be errors in that predicted date. So when you go to the PI predictor, of course, you can enter in exactly the permanent water date that you know. So that's one thing. In the last couple of days, maybe the last week, I've also added a different tab here, and this is for a different PI prediction model that's under development. And maybe some of you have already seen that PI for early sown fields this year have come in a little bit earlier than expected. And so this model may be a little bit more realistic in that case. The other cool thing about this model is it's not just giving you a date, it's also giving you a probability that panicle initiation has occurred over a range of dates. So you see here, there's if I put my mouse over here, I'll go up to, there's a 14% chance that PI happened on the 2nd of January. There's a 50% chance, which is kind of the date that we predict, that it happened on the 8th of January. And, we're 94% certain it's going to have happened by the 13th of January. So it gives you a kind of an expectation of the range of dates, possibly that panicle initiation could have occurred over. And you'll see there's also, this is the permanent water prediction date. And there's also a preliminary flowering prediction model. And you see the flowering prediction, the slope of the curve is quite shallow compared to the PI prediction slope. And that means there's a lot more uncertainty with the flowering date prediction. So, it could happen within a larger range of dates, basically. So yeah, you'll see the model that's been used up to now that's on the PI Predictor website, like for this particular field, it's predicted the 13th of January. This model's predicted it's the 8th of January. So yeah, it's a bit of a difference there. Also, with all of these graphs, if you find there's too much going on the graph, you can just click on the legend there to turn lines on and off like that, which is sometimes useful. And then up at the top right is kind of the satellite data kind of graph. And so what you've got here is a time series of, this is actually a time series of NDVI. The little blue points are when we've actually got a good satellite image. And you see, sometimes you'll see large gaps between the little blue dots, and that's because there's been, cloudy days that have blocked the images, so we don't use that data because it's dodgy. So we've tried to only use good data. And then the line here is an algorithm that kind of smooths between the points. And so there's a couple of other things going on this graph. You can see the sowing, permanent water, and PI predictions are shown there as well. And often permanent water, if there's not heaps of growth happening, and so the satellite can see the water on the surface of the field, you'll often see a dip in NDVI when permanent water gets applied like that. Then in the background here, there's this purple kind of coloured curve and a shaded area. And what this is it's looking at all previous fields in this region for this sowing method from, I think, 2018 to 2022. So like 5 years previous data. And this is the average kind of growth curve for all fields in this regen sowing method. So the middle line is kind of the average for the industry, and the shaded area is like the 5% to the 95%. I think that's right. Could be 10 to 90. But anyway, it's the kind of the average industry growth curve. So it's and this is one thing we're really keen to get feedback from agronomists about. You know, how do you see the usefulness in kind of comparing what you're seeing happening in this paddock compared to previous years? So if you see a difference, it could be just different sowing date. It could be that there's heaps of nitrogen availability, or there's not much nitrogen availability. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why you could see this being different from the average industry curve. The other thing, there is another little tab here that turns on 3 other lines. I'll just turn off the purple one just because it starts to get a bit busy. But this shows the average curves for the bottom 10% yielding fields, the sort of the middle 10%, and the highest 10%. And so like the green is the highest 10% yielding curves from previous seasons. Orange is the middle 10%, red is the lowest 10%. And so it sort of already gives you some indication what factors might lead to low and high yielding fields. Like typically we see the low yielding fields often are slower to develop, whether that's slower, like a later sowing date, or whether it's less nitrogen availability, or whatever it is. You know, the lower yielding fields tend to have that kind of a characteristic. So that's available there too, just to kind of benchmark what's happening in this particular field. And then you've got a bunch of tabs across here. Feel free to stop me if you've got any questions or suggestions as we go along. Happy to take any thoughts and interjections. But the second tab here is the growth rate. And this is basically just the slope of this curve, right? So like for this particular field, permanent water may be applied around the 2nd of December, and then you see the growth really start to take off. And then it's getting towards, you know, peak canopy cover about now. And so the slope is quite shallow. And so that's what you see here. After permanent water, massive increase in growth, so really high growth rate. And then as we're getting towards canopy cover, the growth rate kind of tapers off like that. There's also a variability tab. And what this is looking at is what's the standard deviation, basically, of all the pixels within the field. So it's a measure of kind of in-field variability. So for example, if you look here, this field might have quite high in-field variability because there's a very low patch there. So there's quite a lot of deviation across the field. So that might have, you know, that might be sitting up on the top of the kind of the expected range. So if you do see one that's got really high variability, it might be worth going, you know, into data farming or some other product or you know, that kind of thing to have a look at what's the cause of this in-field variability. Then there's this tab N index, and this is it's very similar to the veg index like NDVI, except this is a index which is really geared towards predicting nitrogen. So with Brian Dunn at DPI, we've done lots of years of experiments with remote sensing of nitrogen, and we know, you know, some of the satellite indexes that can really predict nitrogen or at least give a good sense of how much nitrogen uptake there is. And so this one might be particularly useful, like if you're seeing that the growth curve is way ahead of the industry averages, maybe possibly, I mean, again, you need to ground truth, tissue test, all the rest of it. But it might be an indication that it doesn't need extra nitrogen, like if it's way ahead. And we have seen, maybe I can just drag across this here, like this is a curve from last season. Sometimes if you do see a nitrogen curve like this, it's often an indicator, well, anecdotally, there has been a few fields that this kind of curve leads to lodging. Like it could be an indication of lodging just because of that very high biomass accumulation. So again, really interested to have feedback, like what you're seeing on the ground, particularly as the season progresses, getting towards the end of the season. You know, how does this curve relate to what you're seeing in the fields? And then the last one here is grain moisture prediction. Probably won't go into that too much today. It's more in a couple of months probably. But just to say that there is a model that's kind of predicting the trend of grain moisture over time. We're not seeing much at the moment because it's not really towards that end of the season yet, but that'll get filled in as we get there. Yeah, so you can click across the different fields and you'll get all those curves for all the different paddocks on the farm. There are a couple of other tabs across the top here. So one is weather data. So some of these models are based on a combination of remote sensing and weather. Some are based only on weather. And so what you'll see on this one is you've got rainfall across the bottom. I'll turn that off because just to get it out of the way. The dashed lines are the historical averages, like from the last 23 years, I think, since 2020. Oh, sorry, since 2000. And then the solid lines are this year. We've got a forecast model that predicts 2 weeks in advance. So that's a US model. And then after that 2 weeks from now, it's just using the historical averages for predictions. And this gets updated every day. So basically the forecast window just keeps on moving on as we get through the season. Again, you can zoom in and all that kind of thing. So one interesting thing here is that this particular model is predicting some low temperatures around the end of January, which we know is, sort of the microspore getting towards flowering time. So this is probably something to be wary of. I don't think the weather zone models have predicted it being quite this low, but definitely something to watch. Obviously, this is still a week out or week and a half out. So yeah, so you've got your weather data there. And then this last tab, Troy suggested this one. This is a graph of, for this particular farm, all the previous rice crops from 2018 onwards. It's the growth curves for all the previous crops that have been grown on this farm. So this might be useful if you want to sort of compare what's happening this season compared to what's happened in previous seasons, because we yielded this in 2022 and this happened, it lodged in 2018 or whatever. So it might just be a useful way to benchmark this season against previous seasons. The curves are coloured by year, so green in this case is 2018, and so on, and dashed for different sowing methods. Drill is the solid ones. And again, you can turn curves on and off if you want to just sort of look at some particular ones. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the dashboards. I just thought I'd show a couple of interesting cases. I showed that lodging example before. Here's an example of a field from last year. And we do have all these dashboards from last year as well. So if you've got a grower that grew last year and you want to have a look at what happened last year, we can send that through as well. But this is an example of a mid-season drain from last year. So you can see the growth increased. Then there was a drain around the start of December, and that caused the NDVI to drop again. Maybe there was a little bit of moisture stress around there. And then it was filled up again towards the end of January, about here, I think 20th of January. Oh, sorry, 20th of December or so. And then the growth took off again. And yeah, you can see on the permanent water predictor. So it's predicted permanent water on the 23rd of November. But as the field was drained, the prediction probability of permanent water went down and then went up again as it was filled up again. And so I know maybe this year there's been a few that have done the mid-season drain to get nutrients or or different products on. So this might be a useful one to sort of look at the vegetation stress during the draining. That might be a useful thing as well. And then yeah, so this is RAPL. This was RAPL for last year. You can see there's many paddocks at RAPL, so it's a pretty full dashboard, this one. But this one here is an example of a delayed permanent water field. So zone on the 28th of October, there would have been a bunch of flushes in here, permanent water on the 22nd of January. And again, with the growth curve, you can see during the kind of the intermittent irrigation period, the growth is starting to happen a bit. Then permanent water is applied, and water always drags NDVI down a bit if there's not full canopy closure. So that's why you see that little dip there. And then after permanent water, the growth really started to take off. And you can see that reflected in the growth rate. So, you know, early season during the intermittent irrigations, there's a bit of growth, slow growth. Then the dip in the growth rate just because water was being applied. So it caused that NDVI to drop, and then very high growth rate as the permanent water was applied. Now, what else? I think that's pretty much all I wanted to show. I guess we got 5 minutes until we get to the 30-minute point. So yeah, if anyone wants to make any comments or suggestions, questions, very happy to take them now.
Yeah, James, while people are thinking about their question, just confirm the steps that they have to take to be able to receive the dashboards. So it's definitely that the area needs to be confirmed in map rice by the grower, so that you've got the planting areas confirmed. We need to have the permanent water date added in there also. Is that correct?
This will predict the permanent water date. Yeah, so the permanent water date doesn't need to be in map rice as such.
Okay, yep. So just the planting area needs to be confirmed. And if they grab permission from the growers via an email or a text, either to Rice Extension or yourself, we can then forward out the link to those farms. That's the process?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, up to now, the agronomists have typically just been sending a text message to the grower. Just reply with yes if you give permission for James to share or Rice Extension to share the dashboard with me. And so the grower replies yes, and then they send a screenshot of that text message. Hopefully we can streamline it a bit more next year, but yeah, that's the process. So yeah, very happy to get as many of these out as people are interested in having, for sure.
Yeah, excellent. So I've got a couple of minutes. Anyone got any questions for James?
Adam Delbo, James, I've got one for you. With the NDVI you're using, it's going to saturate at some point. How do we know when that's saturated on the graphs, I suppose, is my question.
Yeah, yeah, great question, Adam. So I guess you can kind of see the saturation here, can't you? Like even around PI, it's already pretty close to, NDVI is already pretty close to being saturated. Like it's really starting to flatten off at that point. I guess one good thing with this N index is it doesn't saturate as quickly. So once you're getting up and beyond PI, probably the N index is a much more interesting one to start looking at, for sure. And to go along with that, like on if you do, again, if you go to the information and click on the imagery web app, you get this. That nitrogen layer is also available here. So if you just click on that, it says N up for nitrogen uptake. It's not calibrated to actual kilograms hectare of nitrogen uptake, but that will bring up that nitrogen layer. Obviously, it's a bit low at the moment. You can also just change the limits here. But yeah, Adam, once you get towards that sort of saturation time, past PI and that kind of thing, it's probably going to be much more interesting to look at the nitrogen curve or this N uptake layer. So I suppose, I suppose once you see this growth rate getting down towards zero, once you see the vegetation index flattening off, that's when NDVI is starting to saturate, even though there's probably still growth happening towards, towards the flowering date.
Yep. Any more? We're getting close to the 8:30 mark. No, sounds like you've explained it very well, James. Look, we'll wrap it up there. And if anyone's got any questions, they can obviously get in touch one-on-one if they want any follow-up or having difficulties getting the grower permission or anything like that. Happy to follow up. So thank you to everyone for joining this morning. I think it's a great project and some very useful tools for practical management decisions going forward. And if you've got any feedback, either send it through to James direct or to Rice Extension. Happy to pass that on and working with James. So thank you everybody for joining. We will put the Zoom up on our website so that if you want to go back and see how it was explained in your own time, we'll do that as well. And look forward to taking any further questions and development going forward. Thank you very much, everyone.
Just before you all go, what do you guys think you'll be able to use this for as agros? Anyone? Yeah.
I can see you, Greg. You're on mute though.
I believe we're good for benchmarking just to see where our field's at in relativity to previous years and in the industry as well.
Yep.
I think that relativity to previous years is a great addition on that one. James, how far can you go back?
I think we've only got crop boundaries or like the geography files for the fields back to 2018. So that's we do have satellite imagery like this is coming from the Sentinel-2 satellites, which go back to 2016. So there is imagery available back to there, but I just don't think we've got paddock layers back to there.
Yep.
I think as well, like feedback from agros is a good tool because James is extremely clever and has the ability to manipulate things or change things slightly to show you what you want to see. Like we work pretty closely with him on this project. So certainly it is a really good tool. We at Rice Extension think it's awesome. So certainly please get in touch with us if you have any ideas about it because, particularly I think, next year when we've got more of an idea about how we're going to do it, I think it'd be good.
You there? I think it's a pretty good tool. To be honest, I'm excited that just adds to the information that we're able to use. But I agree with Greg that it's probably I'm liking the idea of being able to look back historically at what we did last year and how we managed those crops and be able to sort of make decisions as well based on those graphs that we can see and explain to growers what's going on.
Yeah, awesome. I should also mention Brian has got a bunch of trials in this year, and they're really large nitrogen plots. He's got it in a few grower fields. So I think they're 40 meters or 50 meters by 50 meters that we can actually see clearly with the satellite. And we had the same last year as well. And some of those trials, as well as they're doing heaps of samples in commercial fields this year and last year as well, of like grain moisture, PI timing, flowering timing, yield, quad carts, nitrogen uptake. Like there's heaps of sampling going on. So yeah, just as we go forward over the next couple of years, there's going to be heaps more ground truthing going into this And I think particularly it'll be really interesting to look at this grain moisture. I can probably bring it up for this is the RAPL grain moisture prediction from last year. So like on the 1st of March, you'll probably start seeing something, and it uses a combination of remote sensing and weather. So it'll be able to forecast, you know, in some time ahead, you know, when are we going to get to 28% moisture, which is maybe around the physiological maturity where you know, it's safe to have drained by then. And when are we going to get to 22%? So managing that harvesting timing. And because we got those large nitrogen plots, you know, nitrogen is a massive effect on how fast the fields drain down in terms of the biomass and things like that. So it'd be really good to continue to ground truth and get that kind of data on this as well.
Beautiful. Anything else? Mark, anyone from Rice Extension? All good? Rightio. Thank you, James. That was fantastic. And yeah, it is very exciting. I agree with Adam's comment. It is a very exciting project, and we'll keep working on how we deliver it out and make it easier to get to in the coming seasons. So thank you all again. We'll wrap it up there, and we'll hold another one as the models and the work progresses. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks all.
Good on you. Thanks, James.
Yeah.